Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. How are you, everyone? Today we will discuss the last lecture in our neuroscience module. The name of the lecture today is called Cerebellum. I'd like to remember you that our central nervous system is composed of different parts, which are cerebrum, cerebellum, and brainstem. We talk about cerebrum and spinal cord, so today we will talk about the last part in our central nervous system, which is called cerebellum. What about cerebellum? Cerebellum is a very important part in our central nervous system, which is responsible for balance. So, we will talk about histological features and structure of the cerebellum. By the end of the lecture, you will be able to describe the layers of cerebellar cortex. Number 2, you can list the names of the cells forming each layer in the cerebellar cortex. Number 3, you can describe the structure of each cell in different layers of cerebellar cortex. And the last item in ILOs, that you can describe the structure of the glomerulus. You will know that there is a structure which is called glomerulus present inside cerebellum. The cerebellum. At the first, you must know that the cerebellum is formed of two cerebellar hemispheres, joined by what? Joined by narrow vermis. It lies in the posterior cranial fossa. So, it's a site in the posterior cranial fossa, connected to the brain stem through 3 peduncles. What are the names of these peduncles? They are called cerebellar pedunculi or cerebellar peduncles. As regards the names of these cerebellar peduncles, they are superior cerebellar peduncle, middle cerebellar peduncle, and inferior cerebellar peduncle. What about the function of the cerebellum? The cerebellum uses sensory output to regulate muscle tone and coordinate motor function, which maintain equilibrium and balance. As regards the histological structure of the cerebellum, you will know that the gray matter and the white matter as cerebrum, gray matter present outside and white matter present inside. As regards the gray matter, it's formed of the outer cortex and 4 pairs of intrinsic cerebellar nuclei. So, what are the components of the gray matter here? Number 1, outer cortex. Number 2, 4 pairs of intrinsic cerebellar nuclei in the gray matter. What about the white matter? The white matter is formed of 3 components. Number 1, afferent connections. Number 2, efferent connections. And number 3 are intrinsic fibers. Here we can see the structure of cerebellar cortex on both sides. The right side stained by H and E or hematoxylin and eosine stain. You can see that the surface is folded into folia. Here on the left side, this is also cerebellar cortex folded into folia, and here we will discuss the structure. On the right side, you can see that the superficial part is called gray matter, but the deeper part is called white matter. As regards the layers, here molecular layer label the superficial area, then Purkinje cell layer which present at the arrangement after molecular, and finally granular layer. So there are three layers in the cortex of the cerebellum, which are molecular layer, Purkinje cell layer, and the granular layer. The cortex of the cerebellum is folded by many parallel fissures to form cerebellar folia. Each folium is formed of central core, which is formed of white matter. This white matter covered by superficially by gray matter. Let's discuss the structure, in details. On the right side, you can see H and E stained section, hematoxylin and eosine stained section for the cortex of the cerebellar cortex. You can see that these are three layers. The most superficial one, which is pale in color, is called molecular layer. The darkly stained color is called granular layer. The zone which is present between molecular layer and the granular cell layer is called Purkinje cell layer. And you can notice that the deeper part is white matter. On the left side here, we can see that there are multiple nuclei, multiple cells present here. Purkinje cell layer present inside rectangle to demonstrate for you that Purkinje cell layer is a very important layer present between molecular above and granular below. The cerebellar cortex is formed of three layers. The first one is called molecular layer, which is the outermost layer in possession. What are the components of this layer? It contains stellate cells and basket cells. So molecular layer contains two cells, number one stellate cell, number two basket cell. As regards the second layer is called Purkinje cell layer. As regards the site of this layer, it is the middle layer that present between outer layer, which is molecular, and inner layer, which is granular. As regards the third layer, or the third layer, is called granular layer, which is the innermost layer. As regards the composition, it contains three cells. First one, granule cell. Second one is Golgi type 2 cell. And the third one is structure, very important, present inside this layer, which are cerebellar islands or cerebellar glomeruli. So what are the components of each layer? Molecular layer containing stellate cell and basket cell. Purkinje cell layer containing only Purkinje cell. Granular layer containing two cells starting by G letter, which are granule cell and Golgi type 2 cell. You must know that granular layer containing a very important structure, which is called cerebellar island or cerebellar glomeruli. What about the first one? The first layer is called molecular layer. As regards the cell, did you remember what are the cells present in the molecular layer? The cells are stellate cell and basket cell. Outermost layer, I know that, contains few nerve cells, many nerve fibers. It's formed of mainly two types of cells, which are basket cell and stellate cell. So basket cell labeled by red rectangle here, and stellate cell labeled by green rectangle here. What about the difference between molecular layer? The cells of the molecular layer, which are basket cell and stellate cell. Number one, as regards the site, basket cell present where and stellate cell present where. As regards the site, stellate cell present superficially at the superficial part of the molecular layer, but basket cell present where? Present in the deep part of the molecular layer. As regards the dendrites of both stellate cell and basket cell are found in the same layer. They contact parallel and climbing fibers. Okay, as regards the third point, axons. The axon of the stellate cell pass parallel to the surface of the cerebellum to synapse with the dendrites of Purkinje cell. But as regard basket cell, it forms basket-like arborization, basket-like terminal arborization, which present around the Purkinje cell bodies. As regards the fibers of the molecular layer, you must know that there are different fibers present here in the molecular layer. Number one, you can see that dendritic arborization and the axons of its own cell, which are basket and stellate cell, present here. Okay. Number two, the dendrites of cells in the deeper layers, which are Purkinje cell and Golgi type 2 cell. This is the second fiber can be seen in this molecular layer. As regards the third type of fibers can be seen in the molecular layer are climbing fibers. What about climbing fibers? They are the afferent fibers to the cerebellum. And the last type of fibers can be seen in the molecular layer are called parallel fibers. Parallel fibers, they are axons of granule cells which are oriented transversely and parallel. So, the types of fibers can be found in the molecular layer are dendritic arborization and axon of its own cell, dendrites of cells which are present in the deeper layer such as Purkinje cell and Golgi type 2, climbing fibers and parallel fibers. Here we can see the molecular layer. You can see that the molecular layer containing stellate cell present superficially, basket cell present deep in the molecular layer. You can see parallel fibers which pass parallel and transverse. You can see climbing fibers here in this layer. What about the second layer in the cerebellar cortex? The second layer in the cerebellar cortex is called Purkinje cell layer. Here we can see on the right side that it is H&E stained section for cerebellar cortex. Here you can see that these Purkinje cell bodies, which is labeled by the name of Purkinje cell bodies, its shape is piriform. Its size is very large compared to other cells around it. From this cell arising Purkinje cell dendrites. These big cells, which are piriform, large in size, present in one layer, forming the layer which is called piriform. Piriform cells contain the structures which are important for its function and form the layer which is called Purkinje cell layer. As regards the Purkinje cell layer, it is the middle layer of the cerebellar cortex. It is formed of one type of cells. What is this cell? It is the Purkinje cell itself. So, the name of the layer is called Purkinje cell layer. As regards the site, these are large cells arranged uniformly in a single plane along the upper margin of granular layer. Okay, as regards the cell body, each cell has a large flask-shaped cell body. It has vesicular central nucleus because it is active cell and containing inside coarse cytoplasmic nacelles granules. What about the Purkinje cell layer again? Here we can see on the right side, this is stained section for the Purkinje cell. You can see that the body is large. Its body is flask-shaped or piriform in shape. From it arising multiple dendrites. These dendrites giving primary and secondary dendrites attached to its spines on each surface of the dendrites. Here we can see that this Purkinje cell present between molecular layer and granular cell layer of the cerebellar cortex. So again, as regards the dendrites of the Purkinje cell, they form an elaborate fan-like dendritic tree at right angle to the longitudinal axis of the folia. It passes to the molecular layer. These dendrites giving branches, so it branches to give rise to primary, secondary, and tertiary branches. What about the axon of Purkinje cell, which is present inside the Purkinje cell layer? Let's talk about the axons. The axons, they represent the efferent pathway from the cortex. This is number 1 point. You will know that they are myelinated, okay, axon passing through the granular layer and white matter to synapse with what? With deep cerebellar nuclei. You can know also that the axon give collaterals that synapse with Golgi type 2 and the basket cell. So the most important points here, you must know that the axon of Purkinje cell represent the efferent nerve fiber from the cortex. You will know that is myelinated and passes through granular layer and white matter to synapse with deep cerebellar nuclei. And the last point, which is very important, that you will know that it gives collateral that synapse with Golgi type 2 and the basket cell. What about granular layer? This is the last layer in the cerebellar cortex. What about this layer? Did you remember about the structure of this layer? Granular layer containing 2 types of cells which are started by G letter. They were Golgi cell type 2 and granule cell. Also, you will know that granular layer containing inside a very important structure starting with G letter also, which is called glomerulus, or other name is called cerebellar island or cerebellar glomerulus. So what are the structures present in the granular layer? The structures inside are granule cell, Golgi type 2 cell, and cerebellar glomerulus or cerebellar island. Granular layer again, it is formed of closely packed cells separated by non-cellular space called cerebellar island or cerebellar glomerulus. Here you can see that there are 2 types of cells which are granule cells and Golgi type 2 cells. So they are formed of two cells, granule cell and Golgi type 2, and containing also non-cellular structure which is called glomerulus or cerebellar island. Again, here in the cerebellar cortex, we continued in talking about granular layer. Granular layer here, you can see that it contains granule cell and Golgi type 2 cell. What about the difference between two important cells? As regards the difference between, you can see that as regards the cell body, granule cells are small cells. They are deeply stained nuclei present inside, few nestle bodies present inside. However, in the Golgi type 2 cell, you can see that its nuclei are vesicular in shape or open-faced nuclei. As regards dendrites, what is the difference? In granule cell, you will show claw-like ending that terminate in the glomerulus. Meanwhile, in Golgi type 2, these dendrites extend in all layers of the cortex. As regards the axon of both cells, the axon of the granule cell, these axons ascend to the molecular layer, where they bifurcate after that to give rise to parallel fibers, which synapse after that with dendrites of Purkinje cell. However, as regards Golgi type 2 cell, its axons end within the cerebellar glomerulus. So, cell body of granule cell is small and Golgi type 2 characterized by vesicular nucleus. As regards dendrite, the dendrite of granule show claw-like ending terminate in the glomerulus, but Golgi type 2 extend in all layers of the cortex. As regards the axon of granule cell ascend in the molecular layer, then bifurcate, then passing as parallel fibers to synapse with dendrites of what? Of Purkinje cell. Meanwhile, as regards the axon of Golgi type 2, it ends within the cerebellar glomerulus, cerebellar glomeruli or cerebellar island. Okay, here we will talk about a very important structure which is called the cerebellar island or cerebellar glomerulus. This structure is non-cellular. You must know that this is non-cellular structure. Formed of what? Let's see. Cerebellar island, its other name is called cerebellar glomeruli. What about the structure? The structure of this island or glomerulus is complex synaptic structure in the molecular layer, appear as pale non-cellular area in the granular layer. So, cerebellar island again, its other name is called cerebellar glomeruli. Here we can see it is non-cellular. It complex synaptic structure in the molecular layer appear as pale non-cellular area in the granular layer. Again, what about cerebellar island? Its other name is cerebellar glomerulus. What about the structure of this island? It is formed of one mossy fiber. What is the meaning of mossy fiber, or what is the mossy fiber? It is the afferent to the cerebellum, except olivocerebellar fibers. Rosette, which form the center of each glomerulus. Okay. This island, it contains numerous mitochondria. This island containing mossy fiber, this fiber containing numerous mitochondria, synaptic vesicles, neurotubules, and neurofilament. Okay. What other? The second structure here is the dendrite of granule cell. The third structure in the island is axon of Golgi type 2. So what are the components of the cerebellar island? The components of the cerebellar island are one mossy fiber, which is rosette in shape, containing inside numerous mitochondria, numerous synaptic vesicles, numerous neurotubules, and numerous neurofilaments. This is the first structure. Also cerebellar island containing the dendrites of granular cells or granule cells, containing also third structure, which is the axon of Golgi type 2. So please remember that the structure of cerebellar island is 1 mossy fiber, 2 dendrite of granule cell, 3 axon of Golgi type 2. You must notice that granule cells are the only excitatory neuron in the cerebellar cortex. This is a very important note to know that granule cells are the only excitatory neuron in the cerebellar cortex. Again, cerebellar island, its other name, as I have mentioned, what? Its other name is cerebellar glomerulus or cerebellar glomeruli. What about the function? The function of cerebellar island is to excite granular cells, which in turn excite Purkinje cell. So it excites granular cell at first through its dendrite, which in turn excites Purkinje cell. The axon of granule cell, they are unmyelinated nerve fibers, ascend vertically to the molecular layer and synapse with what? Synapse with Purkinje cell dendrites. Here on the left side we can see the structure of cerebellar island is formed of mossy fiber, which is yellow in color, at its end forming rosette-shaped structure containing mitochondria and neurovesicles, become in contact with dendrite of granule cell and become in contact with the axon of Golgi type 2 cell. I discussed the gray matter of the cerebellum. Okay, now we will talk about the white matter of the cerebellum. What about the white matter? Did you remember? The white matter of the cerebellum present here in the inner aspect, such as what? Such as cerebrum. But compared to spinal cord, white matter was present on the outside. So white matter here of the cerebellum present inside. The white matter is formed of what? Formed of 3 fibers, 3 types of fibers. These fibers are intrinsic fibers, afferent fibers, and efferent fibers. Let's talk about each one. Number 1, intrinsic fibers. These fibers are the fibers that connect different regions within the cerebellum. Intrinsic fibers, again, these are fibers that connect different regions within the cerebellum. Here on the right side you can see that this is the diagram showing us cerebellum containing white matter present inside, covered by gray matter which cover the white matter and covering it from outside. This is a coronal section, posterior view in the cerebellum. What about the afferent fibers in the white matter of the cerebellum? The afferent fibers in the white matter of the cerebellum, they are 1 mossy fibers and 2 climbing fibers. Mossy fibers, okay, this is one of the afferent fibers which enter the cerebellum. The second afferent fiber is called climbing fibers, which come from what? Inferior olive, which present in the open medulla oblongata in the brain stem. The last type of fibers which are present here in the white matter of the cerebellum is called efferent fibers. What about efferent fibers? Efferent fibers originate from deep cerebellar nuclei. Okay? Here on the right side you can see in this diagram that Purkinje cell axon is labeled here because it arrived from Purkinje, and the second fiber is efferent cerebellar fibers which arrive from nuclei, cerebellar nuclei. Summary. Here we will remember what is the structure of the cerebrum and cerebellum. Did you remember? On the right side, this is the structure of the cerebellum. Did you remember the layers of the cerebellum? Again, let's say they are the cerebellum. It's formed of 3 layers. The first layer was molecular layer. The second layer was Purkinje cell layer. The third layer was granular layer. These 3 layers forming the cortex of the cerebellum. After that, we can see white matter, which contains afferent and efferent nerve fibers. As regards the cortex, cerebellar cortex, molecular layer contain 2 types of cells, which were stellate cell and basket cell. As regards the second layer, named by Purkinje cell layer, contain 1 cell only, which is called Purkinje cell. And the last layer is called granular layer, containing 2 cells which start by letter G. Their names are granule cell and Golgi type 2 cell. Remember also that there is very important structure present inside the granular layer, which is called glomerulus or island. This structure is non-cellular structure called cerebellar glomerulus or cerebellar island, formed of 1 mossy fiber plus dendrites of granule cell plus axon of Golgi type 2 cell. Remember also on the right side in H&E stain section here that Purkinje cell, which formed Purkinje cell layer, was a very big cell, flask in shape, containing a nucleus which is vesicular and open face, arising from it multiple dendrites. These dendrites giving branches, primary, secondary, and tertiary branches. Remember also that the cerebrum or cerebral cortex formed of what? Formed of 6 layers. The first layer was molecular layer. The second layer was external granular layer. The third layer was external pyramidal layer. The fourth layer was internal granular layer. The fifth layer was called internal pyramidal cell. Its other name is ganglionic layer. And the sixth layer and the last layer here is called multiform cell layer or polymorphic cell layer. Let's test yourself here in this very small quiz. As regards the excitatory neurons of the cerebellar cortex are basket, granule, Golgi, stellate. What is the correct answer here? The excitatory neuron of the cerebellar cortex are basket or granule or Golgi or stellate. Yes, the correct answer is granule cell. Question number 2. White matter is formed of space, while gray matter is formed of space. What are the components of white matter? White matter is formed of fibers or tracts. Excellent. While gray matter is formed of what? Nuclei. Excellent. Or cells, neurons. As regards the following question, surface of cerebral cortex shows space, while surface of cerebellar cortex shows space. What is the correct answer? Surface of cerebral cortex shows sulci and gyri. Excellent. Meanwhile, the surface of cerebellar cortex shows folia. Excellent. The next question, fibers in the molecular layer of cerebellar cortex are, what is the correct answer? Yes, parallel fibers and climbing fibers. As regard cerebellar glomeruli are present in where? Did you remember? The site of the cerebellar glomeruli or cerebellar island? Yes, cerebellar glomeruli were found in the third layer of the cerebellar cortex, which is called granular layer. Did you remember the component of this island? Yes, it is non-cellular structure. It is formed of one mossy fiber plus dendrite of granule cell plus axon of Golgi cell. Which of the following cells are not found in the cerebrum? Pyramidal cell, Purkinje cell, granule cell, fusiform cell, cells of Martinotti. What is the correct answer? One of these cells not found in the cerebrum. Pyramidal, no, it present in the cerebrum. Purkinje, yes, it present in the cerebellum. So this question, which of the following cells are not found in the cerebrum? The correct answer here is Purkinje cell, because this is one of the characteristic cells which are found in the cerebellum. Thank you so much for listening. I'd like to understand this lecture, and finally I have finished the lectures of the neuroscience 2 module. I'd like to understand well and study well. Good luck and best wishes, inshallah.